Hello, I'm Edith Bowman.
And I'm Michelle Collins.
That was quite abrupt, wasn't it? But anyway, welcome to On the Box, the podcast where we celebrate the latest releases and most loved shows on BritBox and beyond.
And I am over the moon. I know Edith also is, because this week we are going to be joined by a true A-list star, the fantastic Hugh Bonneville, and I cannot wait to have him here. I'm such a huge fan.
He's been in so many things. I mean, comedy is something that he does so brilliantly, but a specific type of comedy, which I want to talk to you about. W1A, it's just a fantastic, hilarious sitcom all about the bureaucracy inside the BBC, which, hey, I can give you the inside scoop on. But so many other things as well. He's got this new one, actually, 2026, which is a kind of W1A spin-off.
I'm very excited about that. I also watched a show, Douglas is Cancelled, which I binged every single one. I could not get enough of it. It's fantastic. But let's save the Hugh chat for when Hugh is here. I'm a little sick. I don't know if you can hear it in my voice. I hope that I sound mostly okay. But how was your week, Edith? What's new in your life?
Oh, do you know what's new in my life? A new app. I love a new app, Michelle, but my new app is to try and make me a bit healthier. So, I mean, it's probably going to last maybe a week, but you know that thing where you go, yeah, I'm going to do a 7-minute exercise every morning and I'm going to log all my meals.
You said 7 whole minutes? It's not too much for me. 7, I'm like, 7? No, not happening.
Yeah, and also I've got much better things to be doing with my time than logging my food. It's like, come on. Yeah.
I was just in Wisconsin, by the way, which is the home of the cheese curd. And by the way, the friendliest people. It is a stereotype. And I'm curious in England where that stereotype counts, because here it's like Midwesterners are famously friendly. And I have to say they absolutely lived up to their reputation. Every Uber drive I took, there needs to be a show called Backseat Therapist, where it's me in the back of an Uber. And I get in this one car and this girl was very quiet. I also like having a female Uber driver because I know I'm not going to get trafficked, which is a big risk for me.
Yeah.
I'm 6'1", no trunk could handle. It would have to be like
on the roof rack, straight on the roof rack with Michelle.
Like an old Cadillac. In the meantime, so she was so quiet, and then I think I just asked her a question, and she went, "I'm sorry, I've got a lot on my mind." And that's like the last thing you want to hear an Uber driver say, because we're on the highway, Edith.
Yeah. I hope
like
it's driving to my destination.
Yeah, not my final one. Anyway, and then she told me all about her family. And at the end, I'm like, I should be getting the fee here because I did all the work. But it's a wonderful state, lovely people. Where in England would you say the Midwesterners are?
Is definitely the Scots. They've got that friendly thing where, everybody's welcome. And but I've started doing this thing on the tube where because nobody talks to anybody or like shows any kind of emotion or recognition or whatever, and I'm probably going to get in trouble for it at some point, but just trying to like eyeball people and sort of just connect in some sort of way, and just a smile. I'm not getting anywhere with it yet, but I'm going to persevere. So I might be with you next week. I might not. Who knows?
I really hope you're eyeballing all the right people. You're like, I stare people down. Did you talk to people on the New York subway when you were here? Because I am like you. I do that. I'm a chatter.
Yeah.
And sometimes people love it here. Like, especially, I'm going to say, like middle-aged to older women who are just going to work or whatever. If you like their bag or whatever, you can start a conversation and genuinely meet the loveliest people on the New York City subway.
No, I did. And there was a couple of times where I knew where I was going, but I kind of like, I like the cut of people's jibs. So I went up and I was like, is this the right line for? And then it just starts a conversation, and it was really nice. And then there was one awkward situation where it was a couple and they got off at the same bit I was getting off at, and I wasn't sure whether that was actually where they were getting off at. So I just stopped and looked at my map for a bit before I ended up in their trunk. But yeah.
I'm there too. I'm like, Edith, what are you doing in this trunk? This is crazy. Both kidnapped in the same damn trunk. Meant to be together, folks. We can't help it.
That's our next podcast, Michelle. Before we speak to Hugh, though, I wanted to ask you about comedy and him and comedy, because I said at the start that, something like W1A in this new show 2026, it's a specific type of comedy. It's not a kind of like canned laughter, audience laughter. There's a satire in there as well. How would you describe that kind of comedy?
It's a great question. And I would say that when I was watching it, it reminded me so much of the original UK Office. Here, it was simmering English tension, which for me is quite a turn on. So I found it less funny than hypersexual, the show. I'm just like the quiet Englishness of it all. But yeah, it's one of those things where you kind of laugh because you're so uncomfortable by it
Yeah.
all. And yet, we've all been in these situations for the most part where we've worked in an office with incompetent people or no one knows what they're doing. Everyone's running around with their heads cut off and kind of pretending and sort of acting, even in an office setting. Everyone's sort of acting a part anyway. So I found it almost uncomfortable at times, but it was very, very funny. And he's wonderful. What did you think?
Yes, same. And it's the timing things as well. And what I love about the show is the amount of people that have come through that show that are now kind of like megastars. Hugh's obviously done so much, megastar in himself, but like Olivia Colman and Jonathan Bailey. But just kind of lovely that it's a show that people want to be part of as well, because there aren't many of those kind of things around. They come around really sort of sporadically and irregularly, like The Office, like you say.
Now, I'm very excited for Hugh to be here because my introduction to him was in one of my favorite movies that I hate to tell you, I've seen probably 300 times, Notting Hill,
No way.
where he plays, I think Bernie, his name is his name, and he's like the friend who meets Julia Roberts in the initial kind of house party. And says to her, well, it's really hard making money as an actress. How much, what are you making? A couple thousand a year? It's like $15 million. He was so great in that. And it's so funny because there's something about his face, and I'm excited to talk to him about this, where you just kind of almost have to be on his side a little bit. He's got like a sweetness to his personality and like kind of a dopiness. I say that with love. But that was, I think a lot of Americans, that was their introduction to him.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about that one. I think I love him in Paddington. I think he's just so great. He's so great as Mr. Brown because he's so grumpy and he's so. But then it's that softness in Paddington too that's so great, and that scene where he does the yoga pose between the two trains. But I love those films and I love him in that. But also when you think about Downton Abbey, how long he played that character for. It's quite bonkers. It's really crazy, like how many episodes they did. I can't remember how many it was, but how many episodes there were. And then obviously the films on top of that. It's just...
And do you remember when Downton started? I mean, even still, obviously, I think any TV show that goes to film, I actually can't think of very many examples off the top of my head where you had a hit television show and they're like, actually, we're going to put this on the big screen.
With the same cast.
Yeah. And filling the theaters up. But just the cultural moment that Downton Abbey, the cultural impact that show had. I don't want to spoil it for those who haven't seen it, but there are certain characters who are killed off. And
quite quickly.
The hottest one dies the soonest. Theo James, remember that? They killed the hottest one off first. I'm like, can't we have anything? Yes, they wrapped him up in the rug. Remember, it was like episode 2. I'll ask him about that. Well, now we are just absolutely thrilled to welcome our guest for this week, and I'm going to pay him a huge compliment. I would venture to say he has the best Wi-Fi connection of any celebrity that has been on our podcast so far, which is really saying something. Wow. Guys, please give a very special on-the-box welcome to the wonderful Hugh Bonneville. Hi, Hugh.
Hello, Michelle. Very nice to see you. You're very pixelated, so I'm marvelous.
That's just the work I've had done, Hugh. I spent a lot of money to look this pixelated. Thank you for being here. First of all, how are you doing? You have so many projects in the works at the moment. Are you getting any rest is what I want to know.
Well, you actually catch me on my day off. So I'm quite horizontal at the moment. I'm doing a play in the West End in London, which I'm thoroughly enjoying. But one of the perks is we do an extra matinee, but it does mean we have a Monday night off. So that's very civilized.
Wow.
We were just talking about theatre, weren't we, Michelle, in terms of like just how vibrant it is, and there's just a real, I don't know, there just seems to be a kind of beautiful celebration of what the West End has to offer at the minute. What's the appeal for you, Hugh, to get back on stage in that way?
Really, that it's live, that frankly, everything, including this experience I'm having right now, I'm wondering if it's real or not. And, and we look at the news and we wonder how much of that is real. So the great thing about theatre is, it's real, it's live. There's no jiggery-pokery, apart from unless you're watching Stranger Things, but or Harry Potter. But it's that immediate thing that you are telling a story with a group of people and sharing it, and that's a wonderful feeling.
I want to ask a question about live theater because I just read an article, I think this weekend, where people are so used to being on their phones now and so kind of disconnected from each other that there's been this trend, I guess, of audience members talking back to the actors from the audience. Now, this could be an American thing, again, because we are melting down mentally, I would say. Have you found that this has happened in the West End, or have people gotten ruder?
No, I wouldn't say. I don't find that. I mean, people do still not switch their phones off. So, I mean,
Right.
the end of this particular play I'm doing at the Aldwych is very poignant and very quiet and very still. And we did have the sort of comedy diddle-a-da, diddle-a-da, diddle-a-da-da the other night, and there was one, and I opened the show with a monologue to the audience, and there was one night where I heard "Turn right onto Drury Lane," and but I think the main thing that is quite I still grapple with, and I know it's a human condition, is people who sound like they smoke 60 a day or have got tuberculosis decide to come to the theatre, and
Yes.
what's weird is that they cough their flipping guts out most of the show, so you have to sometimes restart lines because, as you know, if you miss. Just one person coughing in a theatre can kill a line because you can't quite hear what was said. Just like even if it was vocalised, it can be, your sort of brain doesn't quite compute it. So sometimes one restarts a line, and yet when it gets to this poignant quiet bit, suddenly everybody knows that they don't cough. So they can shut up for those 5 minutes. Why can't they shut up for the rest? So I'm intrigued, but I don't find the actual sort of answering the phone and saying, "No, I'm in the theatre, I can't talk now," or actually, "No, it's quite good," and all that sort of stuff. We don't seem to have, or we haven't personally experienced in our experience that. So thank goodness.
We have to get you on Broadway.
There
First thing, because
Yeah. You must have had an experience with those phones going off of someone having the Downton Abbey theme tune on there, though, surely.
Thankfully not. Thankfully not.
That's just, I mean, that we were just talking about it earlier, just in terms of the luxury as an actor. You've done so much in between those seasons in the films. It's wonderful, the breadth of what you've done as an actor, but to have the opportunity to go back to a character over such a long space of time and so much happen for those characters, for that world. But it's done now. I guess you've had enough space between that last film coming out to kind of just reflect at all, have you, on that experience of Downton Abbey and that character?
Well, actually, to be really, really honest, we all felt it was finished in 2015 when we did the last TV show. We never thought it would return. I can remember saying to my boss, Gareth Neame, that when he said we're going to make a movie, I said, "Well, good luck, because you'll never herd all these cats together." And then I think with a combination of goodwill and a paycheck, we all did it 3 times again. So it was quite something. So no, not that one was. Yeah, we were all ready to say goodbye, but we all felt we already had. But I think the final film was a genuine farewell. I knew it was absolutely the last time this time, and so I think I took much more much more care, I suppose, each time, for instance, that we filmed in the drawing room for the last time or in the dining room for the last time. I sort of clocked it and really locked it into my memory because I knew it would be the last time that we'd be in there. So there was a sort of poignancy in that sense, but that's the thing about TV and film. Obviously, it lasts. It's still there, and it's still. If I'm rifling through the TV for something to watch, I sort of think, God, it's still there to be watched. So that's it's always around, and we're in touch on and off in various ways. There's a little theatre crowd from the gang coming to see me in Shadowlands next week, I think it is. So there'll be a little reunion there. We all look out for each other, we really do.
I want to ask, while we're speaking about Downton Abbey, because as an American, and we were discussing this before you came on, that show was such a cultural explosion in this country. I mean, it was like the water cooler chat. What do you think it was about this show because it's about the British aristocracy. Like, why did Americans love this show so much?
I don't know. Goodness me, if we all knew that, we'd be, we'd be churning out the formula. But I think because there isn't a formula. I think it hit because it was true to its own little universe, and people used to get quite snippy in England about, how disgusting it was to celebrate the aristocracy. But it was no more a real slice. It was no more a documentary than Star Wars or Star Trek. And no one has a go at Star Trek for being inaccurate. You just really enjoy the characters and the stories they go through. This is just a sort of slightly less stellar version of that. It's a fictional world, and the fact is Julian Fellowes created a world in which these characters lived and breathed, and you cared about them somehow. I remember reading the very first episode before it was cast even, and just thinking, I'm interested in these people. They all sound different. You can tell who's who just by, sometimes characters are interchangeable in a script, or their names are interchangeable, but this wasn't. Mrs. Patmore had a very distinctive voice from Lady Edith, and so you could tell that whoever was writing it, I happen to know it was Julian Fellowes, had a good ear for dialogue, and he, as he often said, he wrote from a position that people try to be good. So there's a undercurrent of benevolence and hope for humanity underneath it, which is why I think so many people of so many generations enjoyed watching it, together. I used to say rather glibly, one of the reasons it works is because it's about tension, not fighting, not violence. It's about romance, not sex. It's about aspiration, not sort of brashness. But actually, sometimes Julian would subvert that. There was the attack on Anna Bates that became a very sort of painful part. There was that sort of tore that idea up really. So it wasn't you couldn't be as simplistic about it. But I think it was just one of those sort of lightning in the bottle things that it was, though I may say so myself, it was really well cast, particularly that first season. You really believed all those people existed. The stories were engaging. It had a soap element so that you were, if you got bored of one story, there was another one on in 20 seconds. And bear in mind that Julian, again, he was passionate about Coronation Street, the great British soap, and passionate about The West Wing's fast pace, and good stories. So, and add to that, each department working at the top of their game, really aspiring to do the very best they could. It somehow hit the right spot at the right time. And Edith, you were so sort of supportive of us over the years at the various premieres and events. And have you got an answer?
It's great storytelling. It's great characters. It's kind of, they're the kind of the believability of how it's written and how it's shot and how it's performed. Really, that was the thing, is you cared about these characters and you wanted to know what happened, and you wanted to know if they were all right or they were coming back or how they were going to cope with the grief or whatever it was. It was. You were invested in them. That was and that was immediate, I think, with the show for sure. I think what's really interesting though, Hugh, and what's brilliant about what you've been part of is that, that kind of a telling of British aristocracy, but then with W1A in 2012 and now 2026, that's a beautiful and brilliant celebration of how unique British comedy can be, I think, as well. There's nothing like it, and you can't really describe it, really.
That's very true, actually, and I can remember so 2012, which was the first iteration of my character Ian Fletcher engaging in this sort of workplace fly on the wall documentary and mockumentary. I can remember the very moment that the producer rang me. For some reason, I can remember I was in Parliament Square in London shooting something, and he rang and he said, John Morton, and I'd done a show called People Like Us on the radio, which was a sort of, again, a faux documentary about a roving reporter just getting into daily lives of people. And of course, it took you a while while you were listening to it to realise, on the radio version, to realise that it was actually a complete send-up. And it was actually, you may have been about a hotel manager going about his daily life, but it took you just half a beat to realise it was utterly absurd and hilarious, but taken very, very seriously. And so when the producer rang and said, John Morton, who wrote that show, is going to do something about the Olympics, I just said yes straight away. I just said, I'm in. I don't need to know anything else, because his writing is his style of writing is so particular, and his direction is that great thing about comedy is that nobody in the comedy should know they're in a comedy. If they do, you blame it. And so these characters take their roles very, very seriously. And Ian Fletcher, who is placed in the first iteration against the backdrop of the Olympic Games, organising the Olympic Games, and he is in the level just below the senior management. And in Britain, it was led by Lord Coe, Sebastian Coe, and so my character is just the level just below him, who basically has to absorb all the flack when things go wrong and has to put the public spin on things. And the great coup was that Sebastian Coe himself agreed to be in the show, so that the joke was never about we are having a go at the Olympics it's all going to be a disaster. If it was, Seb was in on the joke. And so that really sugared the pill, if you like, or allowed the comedy to be of its own nature. And as Edith said, it's a unique style of writing, and it's not quite like anything else. There's another British show called The Thick of It, which was a political satire, which is brilliant. Armando Iannucci, who then went on to co-create Veep and so on, and I understand that show, there was the script and these wonderful actors, this ensemble again of great actors satirizing the British political system. So they'd shoot the script, but then they'd improvise. They'd do versions in which they improvise. So the end result was a sort of hybrid of the scripted and the improvised. So it had this very rough and ready feel. Ours was not dissimilar in terms of its delivery style, but every single word, every and is scripted. So it's an absolute bastard to learn. And mainly because most of it doesn't make sense. If you scrutinise the office scenes when my character is trying to sort of herd these sheep into a pen to say, look, we need to do this by Friday, whatever the task is, and you've got certain characters either with their own agenda or are clueless, speaking jargon or nonsense, which all have sound bites of things they've heard or derived from other sources, very few of which make actual sense. It was really, really hard to execute, but it's all utterly choreographed and scripted by John Morton. So it is. You're right. It's a unique form of its own comedy, even though it looks like others and may sound like others.
It's like Shakespeare in a way, because I feel like much of Shakespeare, you're like, I don't really know what's being said. Maybe that's my lack of education. But you're like, I think I get the gist more than the actual sentences. It's funny because W1A, as someone who has worked in the corporate world, maybe not on that level, but I have been in meetings like that where you sit there and you're going, I don't think anything is actually happening. I think 80% of those jobs are fake. I assume you've never had a job like that because you've just been on stage since birth, it seems, Hugh. So how do you even kind of have you ever been in a situation? Yeah, go on.
I think you've been one's been in enough or heard about enough, in my case, production meetings, and I'm sure you guys have, where you're planning the day and you think, has that guy over there actually listened to what's just been said, and is that thing going to be executed on time? And you sort of know it's not, and that or that they're going to actually come up with, quotes, a better idea and deliver it without any sort of proper oversight. So I always say it's a bit like anyone who's worked in a multinational company at boardroom level, or indeed try to organise the church hall village fete, will recognise the dynamics in these shows. So we started with 2012, and there was a sense, I think you'd probably agree, Edith, that we were cruising towards a precipice in England, in Britain. Could we actually organise the biggest sporting event in the world successfully? And there was a lot of people going, this is going to be a disaster. As it happened, I think it was an absolute triumph. It was certainly the last time I genuinely feel that Britain felt like a united country, because after that the cracks began to appear. For whatever you think about it, the votes in Scotland about independence, and indeed then Brexit and so on. Let alone what happened internationally thereafter. It felt like those 2 weeks in August of 2012 were remarkable, and a properly unifying experience. And Britain did really well relatively to its previous experience in the Olympics. I know, obviously, America usually wins bloody everything, but
they're always so good at stuff, aren't they?
They're so annoyingly good at stuff. But
guys,
we did.
That's so nice. I really appreciate that.
Plucky little England did well. Plucky little Britain did rather well for a change. So there was this enormous pride, and so that actually wonderfully gave John Morton's character, or Jake gave John Morton the springboard into W1A, because he's having fire fought, if you like, the firefighted, is that a word? Having been the firefighter of the Olympic Games, he was then the go-to man to go and help out any other corporate structure, and so hence was called in as head of values for the BBC, zip code being W1A.
Could do with him right now, to be honest, going in there. Anyway, it's the director of integrity is his new role, which I love the title of. It's so good.
Yes. So after various learning, so now in this new iteration in 2026, as it's called, after various learning experiences and learning opportunities in the Qatar environment of the last World Cup, I hasten to add that we are in a parallel universe. We're not actually the International Footballing Association or indeed anything like it, but we happen to be in a parallel universe in a parallel football tournament, which also happens to be being organised in Miami and set against the backdrop of Mexico, Canada and America hosting these games. I mean, it's almost writing itself, isn't it?
Well, I was going to say, like, do you think that the U.S. can pull off what London did back in 2012, given everything kind of happening at the moment, or are we in for
if they allow people, if they allow the players in, there's every chance they might actually play a game. Yeah.
God willing, Hugh. By the way, did you actually go to Miami for the shoot?
I'd love to say yes, but in the same way that Paddington in Peru was never really left the M25 in London. I've never been to Peru, but Paddington has. In the same way, we never left a place called Mill Hill. The irony being that we were in one of the hottest places. Last summer when we were filming, we were in a studio that had originally been the printing press or the printing house for the Jehovah's Witness magazine, the Watchtower.
Wow.
And
I'm
some years
ago.
There we are. And now it's been completely redesignated as a film studio, unfortunately, without any air conditioning whatsoever. So the irony was, had we been in Miami, we would have been cool as cucumbers because everything would have been air conditioned. So we sweated like pigs in Mill Hill for several weeks. But it was nevertheless an amazing cast. John Morton never breaks a sweat.
Wow.
Very much like members of the royal family, I suppose. And is incredibly cool under pressure. And so we had to be too, even though we were all, rinsing our shirts every 5 minutes.
Michelle, I've got to say as well, we were talking about Douglas is cancelled. And Michelle absolutely devoured that show. What a show.
I binged it. I have to say, they said watch the first episode, and I said, no, I'm watching all 4 episodes, and I loved it. And you were so, I mean, again, speaking of things based off of real life, I think every woman has had like kind of a creepy boss where you wonder, are they walking the line? Is this actually harassment, something you can report or what? And the moral questions that this show brought up, and your character in particular, who you never knew, are you on his side or not? And I just thought it was brilliant in a number of ways.
I think Stephen Moffat is a genius writer, and lots of your viewers will know and listeners will know him obviously from Doctor Who and comedies from way back. And I think this had been brewing. This story had been on his desk for a while. He wrote it originally as a play, and I know was very keen for Karen Gillan, with whom he'd worked on Doctor Who a lot, and who's a very close friend of his, to explore that role. And anyway, they kindly came when it became a 4-part TV show. They came to me, and I think like the audience, you sort of start off reading, oh, this is a good farce and a good send up of, again, TV world and all that, and then gradually the tone darkens, and by episode 3 or throughout episode 3, you are squirming in embarrassment, and you're sort of almost angry because you've been taking sides between these two characters. It's, I mean, without spoiling it for those who haven't seen it, and it is a good watch. It's about basically a news or a TV presenter and his protege, who have a great rapport. He's almost like an avuncular. He's an avuncular figure to her, and gradually it darkens when it becomes apparent that a joke that my character made at a wedding was inappropriate and went viral and all the rest of it. And she, the protege, starts stoking the fires. And so, I mean, you may start thinking, well, she's being unfair to this old guy who doesn't quite know the social media ropes. And then you start learning new stuff about was he or was he not complicit in a workplace incident. And even by not being complicit, was he being complicit by ignoring what happened? And, you start questioning, all of us have been in situations where have we acknowledged the balance of power is being abused in a situation? How do we stop it? Are we vocal enough? Are we big enough humans, be it male or female, to step up and say, that's wrong, actually, that should not happen? So it sparks a lot of debate within the show and brilliantly by Stephen writing it, broad farce almost at the beginning, and then twisting the knife. So you come away feeling a bit grubby and thinking, now where do I stand in this?
What I also found amazing about it, having myself, been on a very controversial television show where social media did play a big part in certain people getting in hot water, and just also the role that Twitter has, where you think something so innocent and even something as simple as a retweet will have such crazy ramifications on someone's career and image, and just the most throwaway thing that I think most people would never consider or think twice about when you're someone in the public eye has incredible impact on you. I found that also brilliant, how that was kind of covered, because I don't think it's something most normal people would ever consider.
No, absolutely. That's very true. And well, we can talk about the effect of Twitter and social media till the cows come home. I mean, we're watching wars unfold because of it in real time. It's a very strange environment to be in, and he said, she said is now apparently provable within seconds. And or not, or twisted. I mean, or like we said at the very beginning, are we watching something that's real or not? Is it fake news? Is it deep faked? Is it whatever? So it's a very. The best thing is, I think, is it the Swedish Secret Service who just now use pencils and paper?
Oh, I love that.
I think that's IKEA you're thinking of when you want to remember which furniture you want to buy.
And meatballs. I think with the show as well, it's so well observed with so many of the characters, not just the kind of main characters, like the daughter and the father-daughter, and that whole dynamic and relationship is so interesting in terms of someone of that age being kind of involved in that whole sort of dynamic and storyline, and it's that I found that part of it really interesting as well.
Absolutely, and I think Stephen allowed himself to be the curmudgeonly old man who doesn't understand 20-year-olds in that dynamic. But I think Ben Miles as our boss, as it were, is utterly superb. He's I think he's a genius actor. Playing this utterly convincing, credible, decent bloke who, clearly is overstepping the line. And I think one of my favourite actors, Simon Russell Beale, who plays my agent. Again, I think Stephen Moffat is having a lot of fun, poking fun at the world of the
world
agent,
of,
who will absolutely stand by you until something goes wrong, and then you're out the window.
I wanted to just bring up, if you don't mind, because Glasgow Film Festival was not too long ago, and I know that a film that you were kind of involved with behind the scenes was part of that, Everybody to Kenmure Street, which you exec produced along with Dame Emma Thompson. And it's a film that might not have hit across in the States yet, but just in terms of what we were talking about current affairs and about throwing your weight behind things as well. Talk to me a little bit about this project, Hugh, and how you got involved in it and why it was important for you.
Yeah, it's a remarkable true story, which I have to be really honest about. I didn't know about that just to put it in a nutshell, in 2021, I think it was, during the pandemic, the latter, that part of the pandemic, the equivalent of ICE turned up in a street in Glasgow, and in order to spirit away two guys who they wanted to process or to take out of the system, or said they weren't in the system. And immediately someone basically got underneath the van, physically got under the van that they were going to be taken away in. And the word went out in Kenmure Street in Glasgow on the WhatsApp group saying everybody to Kenmure Street. And they stopped these guys taking, the guys were by now in the van, but they prevented the van from moving. the locals. And then gradually it grew and grew and grew, and the police obviously came along. And by lunchtime, there were literally hundreds, if not thousands of people in that street. And there was a standoff. And by mid-afternoon, community leaders who, were involved. And there was a sort of summit meeting, really, between one of the community leaders and the head of the local police, saying, you're either going to have a riot on your hand in which blood will be spilled, or you walk away. And the key thing to remember was that the Scottish police were not under the authority of what we call the Home Office, i.e., which is a London, a British, albeit British, but actually an English authority.
Yeah.
And the Scottish police are not under that authority. So it was a choice by Police Scotland as to what to do. And in the end, the two guys were escorted out of the van and everyone walked away. So it was a remarkable experience, true story of civil resistance. And passive civil resistance and peaceful civil resistance. But it was done in that uniquely, I suppose, also Scottish way, with this incredible multicultural community, just coming together and just saying, this isn't right. And, the captions go up at the end that both people were, in the end, shown to be not in breach of any overstay orders or whatever you want to call them. I don't know what the legal jargon is, but life went on. And that's, in a funny way, that's almost not the point. The point was it was the way it was done. And it was done with wit, dignity, humility, and collective responsibility. So that's why I got involved with that. And it's, it's doing the rounds of festivals and it's now on public release in selected theatres, and it's been a joy to see the reaction to it, because it is, and it was actually shown in America in
Sundance, wasn't it?
It won the Audience Award at Sundance,
Sundance,
but last week it was shown in Minnesota, and as a sort of part of a sort of healing process, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure.
Because let's face it, there are just to show that there is another way of approaching things.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Hugh, we've talked so much about your illustrious career. I want to know about Hugh Bonneville, the man. You work constantly on stage now. You have a day off. What's the dream day for you? What are you doing?
The dream day, actually...
Chatting to us, Michelle.
Chatting to us, of course.
First and foremost,
Right.
calling us, saying hi, then what?
Then I'm putting the finishing touches to my second children's book at the moment.
Oh.
Rory Sparks, so Rory Sparks is a sort of, I suppose, my alter ego from when I was a kid. And I'm doing 3 books for Bloomsbury Press, and the second one I'm a little bit behind with, and I have to finish the second draft of it in a couple of weeks. So my days off and my mornings off are rather sort of taken up with that. But I have to say it's a complete pleasure. I mean, my first one, which was called Rory Sparks and the Elephant in the Room, I sort of published it last October and went on a little book tour, and the greatest fun was going into schools and talking to kids. And you could talk to them for 20 minutes about Rory Sparks and his adventures and the ideas I had, and then you throw it open to questions from the floor. And the first question always is, where's Paddington? And but then engaging with the children about storytelling. I mean, there's one thing that in the second book there's a tunnel where Rory and his sister get involved in going down a tunnel, and tunnels are always mysterious and exciting, and you don't know, because where do they go and why are they there, and are there good forces or bad forces at work down there? And again, asking sort of 8, 9, 10, 11-year-olds, where do you think the tunnel comes out? And all these hands go up, I've got an answer. And just listening to the variety of answers and the imagination that's been sparked has been really inspiring. And in the UK, and I suspect it's similar in the US, there's been a huge dip in reading for pleasure in all age groups, but particularly in children in the last 10 years, something like 30% down. And so this year in Britain, it's the National Year of Reading is the initiative, and really encouraging people to get back into reading for pleasure. Obviously the sources for this decline are obvious, the rise of the screens and the pandemic being 2 major factors. And so to engage with youngsters, it has been really fun. and that the age of innocence, I suppose, just seeing their innocent imaginations at work. And there is so much imagination out there. So I've really that's been my most of my day off today has been playing around with the story for Rory Sparks.
Do you drink energy drinks? Like, let's promote, because how do you get the energy for all this? I'm just worried about you now. I'm like, this man never has a minute of rest.
Do you know, it's quite funny. I went out for a pint with a couple of old schoolmates of mine about just before we started doing the play. And so I'm whatever I am, 62, 3, I can't remember. Anyway, I'm in my 60s.
It's a number.
And these guys had been both these guys had been retired for 5 years. They'd had very successful careers in the city or whatever. And I said, "What do you do? What's your average week?" And they went, "Well," and they were very relaxed and happy, and a bit of golf. Went and saw, go off and see their kid at university, or go a bit of traveling with their spouse, and they said, "Well, what's your average day?" And I realized, A, I don't have an average day, and B, I'm literally trying to find an hour here or an hour there when I can do, have a meeting about this or something. I thought, what the heck am I doing it for? And I realized I have been a bit driven and a bit, a workaholic, but I do enjoy it. And I can no more imagine stopping acting than a painter can stop painting. It's just something I do and I enjoy it. But I will calm down a bit. It's getting a bit silly now.
Well, it was so lovely just when you mentioned Rory there, just how your face just beamed, and you can really just see the joy that you're getting out of another string to your bow, and kind of and exploring something new and slightly different.
Yeah. Well, it had the most bizarre genesis, because I wrote a memoir a couple of years ago called Playing Under the Piano, which was meant to be a series of sort of showbiz anecdotes, really. That's what they'd asked for. And I ended up writing, well, they'd commissioned 100,000 words, and I ended up writing 165,000 because I got a bit carried away. And in my stupidity and naivety, I thought the publisher would be thrilled, getting 2 for the price of 1 nearly. And but he sort of rolled his eyes and said, "Yes, I'm quite enjoying it, but I'm on page 100 and you're still only 8." And I'd realised that I wasn't just doing showbiz stories. I was actually writing about things that had made me do what I do. And also it sort of became a love letter to my parents, because I realised as I was writing, because as anyone who writes knows, the writing takes over. Suddenly it starts coming from somewhere you hadn't planned. And my father was passing away with dementia. And so it was really a tribute to him. And he was a surgeon, but a very cultured man, and a very, loved the arts. And I realized that my love of the arts and storytelling really came from him and my mum. And so it became a sort of story about them, but also, as I say, about my childhood. So I had to cut a huge amount out of my childhood because it was getting tedious for everybody apart from me. And then about a year later, after it was published, my agent's colleague who deals with children's literature asked me if I'd ever thought about writing a children's book, and I said, absolutely not. I haven't got a chocolate factory in me, or a wizard's castle. And then I said, why do you think I should write something like that? And she said, well, that bit in your memoir when the circus came to town and parked on the common land near where you grew up, and then the kids came to school, and joined your school for a month, sometimes on an elephant. Was that true? And I said, yeah, completely true. They used to come into the playground, and we'd think it was so cool that these exotic kids had this amazing mode of transport. And she said, well, was it also true that you dug a grave for your sister when you were about 8? And I said, yes, completely, because anyone with a sister knows that they need to be got rid of at some point because they're just, annoying. And so she said, well, maybe that's a start for element of your story. And I thought, well, maybe life in Southeast London in my, cozy little life wasn't as boring as I thought.
And I guess when you think about Paddington in a way as well, it was kind of a revival of that character, sort of, because he'd existed in book form and in cartoon form, but these films kind of gave it a completely different, identity and reintroduction to so many people. And, in my mind, up there with the best films ever released, sort of thing as well. You can go back to them again and again and again and just feel joy, and amazing thing to be part of.
It was, and I, like so many people, again, I was, very nervous about it when I heard about it first. I thought, oh, it's going to get turned into a Hollywood whatever, and it's not going to work. And I was very possessive of Paddington, like so many people have been, because part of my childhood, and also I think crucially he was. Those stories, Michael Bond's stories, were the first that I could read for myself. And I took great pride in not having them read to me anymore. I could once, there was obviously a handover period. And I remember vividly reading for myself and looking forward to the next iteration coming out, and the next book coming out. And quite apart from the character and the nature of the character, which we can probably talk about in a moment, but having something that was as precious to me then. And I'd seen a version, I think, on TV when I was young, but by then I'd sort of progressed, I guess, a bit out of that era. And so when I heard that this, it was being done as a movie, and they wanted to talk to me about playing Mr. Brown, I was very dubious because it was a childhood hero going to be mucked about with. And then when I remember reading the first page and starting to laugh, it was all to do with the description of the famous explorer going through the jungle carrying a modest timepiece, and the visuals were of him, of some bearer carrying a grandfather clock. And you think, oh, this is funny. We're in good hands here. And then meeting Paul King, I remember we sat outside. He's the director-writer of the first two. Co-writer of them, and sitting in outside David Heyman's office, the executive producer, and chatting. And I realised within about 30 seconds that I was talking to Paddington. I mean, he has the same spirit of inquiry and wide-eyed, questioning about the world. And you sort of know that he'd be up for any scrape and adventure that was going, and that things might go wrong, but they'd reset to positive. And that's exactly like Paddington. And then, of course, you go and meet David Heyman, who did happen to do Harry Potter and every other blooming film going. You're in pretty good hands. But the thing that really blew me away was once we'd actually been filming, we've done the filming, was seeing the animation for the first time, which was I went into the cutting room and Paul showed me the bear sticking his head down the loo, and I was completely blown away by how brilliant it was, and what Framestore and all the other team, all the teams had done in the animation was extraordinary.
Have you seen the musical yet?
I have. I went to a preview early on, and it was absolutely glorious. And at the time of that we're speaking, it's just not swept the balls, but it's been won 7 Olivier Awards.
Did it?
Yeah, last night.
Wow.
And so it's in for the long haul. It's a gorgeous. Again, you think, is it going to work on stage? But the way they've created the bear is so smart and beautiful and inclusive, and just sort of makes you feel part of the process as an audience member. Obviously, in any theatrical situation, you have to suspend your disbelief, but you're being asked to suspend it to a new level when you're watching a bear who isn't a bear. But the way they do it is so clever, and they don't make the audience feel stupid or smug either. You're taken along with the journey, and the music's beautiful and the performances are wonderful. So I'm just so thrilled that it's got this new life, and Sonia Friedman and her team have taken this big gamble. Any musical is a gamble, and it's really paid off. So my hat's off to all the creative elements, from the cast to the dressers backstage. It's a fantastic show, it really is.
Michelle, do you want to get Hugh involved in our farewell game then, off the back of talking about revival?
But we have a game we like to play called Revival. So here's what we'd like to know, Hugh. If you could revive any one of your favorite British shows, what would it be? Now, this could be a one-off. It could be a mini-series. It could be Let Your Heart Run Wild.
Christmas
and tell
special.
Us.
I know exactly because it's a show I was fixated on as a kid. It's called The Persuaders. And it starred Tony Curtis and Roger Moore, and it was made by Lou Grade for what is now ITV. I don't know whether it was Thames Television or whatever. Anyway, it was a British show, and it was a hugely, for then, expensive show for a British company to make. But Roger Moore was this sort of posh English guy, and Tony Curtis was this bruiser from the Bronx, and grown up on the wrong side of the tracks. And I can't quite remember what brought them together, but they went on these escapades, largely staring at girls in bikinis on the Riviera. I think if it was to be made now, it would probably have to be restyled quite heavily.
Douglas is cancelled too. I'm sensing a sequel. I think it's great. great. Yeah.
But I think it was a proper escapist, and probably I haven't watched it, I have to say, for quite a long time, so I don't know whether it holds up or whether it would offend everybody and get everybody cancelled. But there was I think, you know, the Côte d'Azur caper adventure, the Pink Panther-esque fun and games, you know, I think we could all do with a slice of that sort of escapism.
For sure.
John Barry did the music as well.
The music, the opening.
John Barry did, Barry did the music. He,
that's
of course,
right.
did the James Bond theme, so it's got that kind of
and
like...
the opening titles are fantastic. They're so vivid. So, yes, a show, that would be a great thing to revive. And, yes, I'd love to play the Roger Moore part, albeit a bit older and less suave.
This is great. Even casting yourself in, I'm telling you, he never stops, people. The man is always thinking. Well, you've been just a pleasure, Hugh, honestly. Like we were so thrilled to hear that you were coming on the show, and I know we're both huge fans of yours, and I even love your library. I like your hat. I'm just happy that you're here, and it's been a pleasure to talk to you about all these amazing shows that you have on BritBox and beyond.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Edith.
Yeah, and good luck with the rest of the run as well in the West End as well.
Thank you. We run to, I don't know when your show's going out, but we run till May the 9th. So if you're in London, come and see us at the Aldwych. Shadowlands. It's a beautiful play.
Thanks so much, Hugh.
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. It's lovely to chat to you. Bye.
You're fabulous, Hugh. Nice to meet you. Thank you.
And you. Bye-bye.
Well, listen, if you haven't seen them, W1A and 2012 are available to stream now on BritBox.
And here's some good news. 2026 is launching on May 1st. We're going to be back next week with more insider info from more of your favorite British shows. We love it. We adore you, and we will see you there. Bye, guys.
You've been listening to On The Box, hosted by Edith Bowman and Michelle Collins. The music was by Dario Forzato and Canio Claudio Tristano, courtesy of 411 Music. The production coordinator was Caroline Barlow, production manager was Mabel Finnegan-Wright, the production executive was Ian Hayden. The executive producers for BritBox are Alana McGahey and Diana Robina. The executive producer for BBC Studios is Pete Strauss. The producer was Rajiv Karia. On The Box is a BBC Studios production for BritBox.